While reflecting on my conversations with Alex, the first thing that comes to my mind is understanding perspective, understanding where your own thoughts, your own actions come from, and also understanding other people's point of views, the things that they have gone through in their own lives that result in them bringing potentially a different perspective, a different point of view to the table.
I've known Alex for most of my life, and the entire time that I've known him, he's always been honest, open, and easy to have a conversation with. He tends to listen and think carefully before giving a response. He's a friend I could always approach with new ideas and hear his honest feedback. He's a friend I've always appreciated having around because he is able to help give advice we need him to, and I've always appreciated that.
At a level that I have not seen before, Alex can dissect the inner thoughts that drive your behavior and can describe them with uncanny accuracy. You will be stunned with how accurate and detailed his assessments are, and how those newly found perspectives will allow you to make changes for you to be able to declutter your mind. I trust Alex because I have seen firsthand how these assessments have allowed me to change things about my mind and therefore have a higher quality of life.
I created a lifestyle based on all that I have learned, but it was missing a name. After meeting Mark from Mellow Minded, I can now call that lifestyle the Mellow Minded lifestyle. My obsessive thinking is my superpower. It has driven me to find better ways to interpret my reality. The degree of shame and depression and self-loathing forced my mind to adapt and seek ways to cope in order to survive. Suicide was not an option for me, although it tried to be so many times.
Hi. Hi, how's
How's
it
it going?
I'm good. I'm audible?
Good. Alex. My name's Alex.
Hi, Alex. I'm Mansi. How are you today?
Good. I just woke up, so I might be a little bit tired.
Oh, you could have just postponed it a little bit.
No,
I mean,
that's fine. I'd rather just get it out of the way.
okay, awesome. So let's start from about you. Let's start from there because I don't want to like rush in just like start asking you questions. And first and foremost, thank you for doing this, taking your time and really coming here and actually sharing uh, your own story and your own perspectives about your experience.
Yeah, of course. So I was, I'm adopted from Colombia, so that's gotta, I guess that kind of starts my story. um, and growing up, I was very interested in kind of like thinking outside the box, so always finding objectivity and trying to question like norms and question the way people thought. I noticed as a kid that a lot of people were certain about their reality and they're very certain about how things should or shouldn't be. And I was that kid who was telling my parents, you can't tell me what to do. um, and they would be like, do this because I'm your parents. And I'm like, but why does that matter? Like, why does it just matter? That's not a valid reason. Maybe if you were like more logical about your reasoning, I would listen to you. But just because you're my parents doesn't necessarily mean that I should listen to you. And coming from like a 6-year-old and a 10-year-old, they think that I was, defiant and I had an attitude and things like that. But I think just the way my brain kind of worked was I just wanted to know, I wanted to follow reason. I wanted to listen to logic more than just subjective emotions. So that being said, I think that was a common theme throughout my entire life, and every decision I kind of made, even in relationships and in college, I always tried to find like that best way to live and the best decisions to make that would make the most logic. Whether it would be increasing the probability of being successful for me, or increasing the probability of me being like the best version of myself. Like, I was always striving to just follow that right path in the right direction. Anyway, I always had that analytical mind. So up until about 8 months ago, I realized I could start creating a business out of helping other people kind of find that right direction and kind of have more introspection and self-reflection and help other people kind of navigate towards more authentic ways of thinking instead of subjective, emotional ways of thinking. And so I created a mind analysis, which is kind of a very unique process and a very unique product where I have a client write down, based on a whole bunch of questions that I created and a whole bunch of questions from like cognitive behavioral techniques and life coaching theory and a little bit of like psychoanalysis. And it helps them work through a lot of different aspects of their mind and perception and interpretation of their reality. How they think of their suffering, how they perceive themselves, what kind of story they believe that they are living in, their vision of the future, their goals, their best habits, their worst habits, like kind of just a whole general picture of who they are and where they're currently at. And I take that report that they fill out and I analyze it. It could take me like anywhere from 4 to 15 hours, depending on how in-depth they write down all their answers. And I analyze it and I write down in a report that I generate back a complete mind analysis summary and action plan. And it's essentially a report that helps the client consolidate all of their thoughts into a nice little kind of couple paragraphs and an assessment that highlights potential core issues, limiting beliefs, negative patterns, negative ways of thinking. And it pulls out all these kind of in between the line descriptions and symptoms and traits of theirs that they might not see, or they might need someone else to point out so that they can actually change. And then I provide them with like an action plan of how to address those specific issues over the next 12 months with a life coach, therapist, or obviously with me. And the whole report, the whole thing is it's like a dynamic workbook that you can go through, and I have extra little sheets in there where you can continue to do self-reflection work based on the assessment that I provided. So it's not just like it's not just an assessment for you, it's actually like a continuation type of self-reflecting tool that, again, it's really better for the client to work with a mentor than do it on their own. But at least now, like, people are getting a third party perspective that helps them dramatically shift their perception of themselves, because it's advanced. It's really in depth. I mean, I write, like I said, it takes me about 10 hours sometimes, and a lot of clients are telling me it's worth like 6 to 10 therapy sessions, because the amount of description in there that you can't get in an hour of a therapy session. You have to build rapport over time. So it's like going to therapy 10 times without the actual therapy or processing, because I don't diagnose. I'm not a therapist. I'm not going to diagnose you, but I can point out potential areas that you might want to work with a therapist on. So that's the general kind of where I started and where I'm at right now. I have a lot of different other things in play, such as courses and stuff like that. I made my own custom meditation, but the mind analysis is what I'm really focusing on as my core business product, I suppose.
I have a lot of things to ask you because while you were narrating all of this, I had a lot of flashes in my mind. And for me to even reach out to you, there was only one post that really, took my attention. And first thing, I would start off by I could relate so much to you because um, I guess mainly one of the core things would be I too am adopted.
Oh,
And
wow.
I guess the traits and the signs and the patterns that you were talking about as a kid of your parents telling you, okay, I'm your parent and that's why you're supposed to do it. But I also
Yeah.
had this guilt when you talked about, feeling guilty about your own existence because of the negligence that you faced uh, that had to do with something that you never kind of you couldn't control it, but like it kind of did affect you very deeply. And I guess this is never talked about. It is just probably just there was no sit down conversation because there was so many untold emotions that did come through, and those emotions, I guess, over time does get converted into many actions of our own, and it can have a dark side as well, but it also has. But I'm saying this is something um, I would completely agree because I guess even I would consider myself as a rebel because that is what I was portrayed also when I was young. Either I didn't talk at all, and when I did, I sounded a lot rude because of whatever actions, and I was like, no, like it's my life, and I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and you are no one. Because, but then there was also flip side. I was like, why me? And like you couldn't really connect with someone during that time because you couldn't find anyone, right? I mean, you cannot say like, are you adopted, like can I like tell my story because like do you feel what I feel, because
Yeah.
I don't think I was as open towards my parents also, where I'm going to be like, this is what I feel, because I guess that kind of communication wasn't encouraged or wasn't expected, or I didn't kind of expect that kind of thing. And I think it took a lot of years of me even realizing there's this thing or these patterns that actually had consequences to my life and the way I
Yeah.
was and the way I am right now.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I 100% relate to that. Are you familiar with my Voices of the Adopted Instagram page?
No, I haven't. I'm not, but I'm surely going to now check this out because there's so much like to talk. And you also, I just picked out a few words about the things that you were saying in that particular post. One is, of course, adopted, then was intense emotions, considering yourself as an empath. I
Oh,
think,
yeah.
I guess we, again, humans are very complex beings, and emotions are not something that we openly talk about. Again, it varies places to places and culture to culture. But again, when it comes to, and again, bad guy is also one of the things that you wrote, and I'm like, yeah, that, yeah, I can relate to, because I considered myself to be like, no, I don't want anyone. I'm pretty independent because this comes from very deep end. Because I thought I don't want to be dependent on anyone and love someone so much, because then I had the fear of losing them, and
Mm.
because I had already lost them, like my whatever you call this biological thing connection. Um, who says, who states all of this, Alex? Like who does say that, like adoption, at least during my times, was like, oh, you adopt. And coming here, it see, there are very different reactions you get from people. Okay. At least on face. Like either it could be gender, it could be culture, it could be color, it could be skin, it could be religion, it could be anything. And this was, I think it helped me break the chains and the strings of everything that we associate to. Be it systems, be it religion, be it anything else. The simple form of existence is all that I think I have come to realize, at least after so long, that I'm alive and I'm here, and I think that's all matters, right? Not something
Yeah.
that has happened, or not something that is going to happen, or not something that you associate yourself with name, religion, position, a family, culture, friends, whatever you call that. But I think there's a bigger picture to it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's such an important discussion that definitely is not talked about a lot. It's kind of pushed off as existentialism, and it's pushed off as religious and spirituality, and it has nothing to do with that. It's just fact. Like if you bring it back to physics, we are just energy, and you start at that place, and you start to really contemplate it and begin your life and begin your perception at that place, and then everything else afterwards follows. It's okay to identify with your culture. Obviously, it's okay to identify with all of those man-made things and all of those societal norms, but you should understand that that's not where your life begins. That's not where your existence it begins and is defined by. Like you said, right where we start, the starting point is just existence. It's just unbiased existence and energy. And when you start your life every day, when you wake up and you kind of come from that place, everything else is in line, and everything else you can handle in its appropriate manner, because you have a much more grounded, wiser perception and interpretation of your existence and an interpretation of your reality, so that all the stresses that come into your path can be handled how they were originally meant to be handled. And so many people get lost in that identity aspect of everything else that they're experiencing, and they forget their original, just fundamental, unbiased awareness, aka existence. And that's not developed enough in the human brain, because that doesn't really make any money.
Yeah, but it's more than that, don't you think, Alex? Like, I guess adoption was one of the things that really played a role of me associating myself with anything, with just about anything. Just being blessed and being her, and that's all. There was no right or wrong. There was absolutely none of these conclusions, none of these beliefs. And I read something very interesting. If you have heard Osho, right? Heard Osho?
What is it?
Osho was this very famous guy who again used to talk about, you can call him a guru, during, I don't know what, maybe 60s or 70s, I might be wrong. But check him out. I'm sure you must have read or heard about him. And he says he has written a book called The Independent Mind, and where he states about belief. He says, when someone says belief is something that you never question. You just believe something very blindly.
Right.
I think that's
Yeah,
right.
it's like faith.
What could you tell me a little bit about emotional analysis? That's interesting.
About what?
Emotional analysis.
An emotional analysis?
Yeah.
So did I write that down? Emotional analysis, or is that something that you just felt?
you mentioned it while you were talking, so I just wrote it down. You said emotional,
Okay.
probably working on, or you kind of assess people based on their emotions. By
Sure.
one of them.
Yeah, so I mean, when you think of the word analysis, anything could be analyzed. It's a little bit more advanced. You could think of analysis as like an advanced kind of contemplation process where you're taking something and you're looking at it with a microscope or a whatever the thing is called. I'm thinking of, the little, it's not, what is that? Magnifying glass.
Yeah.
You're looking. So that's how I like to think of it. So an emotional analysis is looking at individual emotions that somebody experiences, like fear and anger and sadness and joy, and just analyzing and detailing and structuring what makes that person feel those specific emotions and why. So it's important to have an understanding of, say, what makes you happy. And that's an easy question, or at least it seems easy. But once you start to put some time into it, you start to realize how difficult that question is to answer. And then once you ask why, say I say riding my bike makes me happy. Well, if you ask why, that starts to get a little bit more tricky, because say, all right, well, I mean, I'm exercising. It's just naturally releasing dopamine in my head and it just makes me happy. Exercising makes me happy. But then you ask why, then people start to get confused. Like, what do you mean why? Like, that's the end of the question. Like, that's the answer. But they have this like kind of surface level ability to answer things. But there's a lot more. There's so much more that actually drive the reason why riding a bike makes you happy. And so what I help people do is I kind of like, it's like an iceberg, right? You have the tip of the iceberg over the water, but there's an entire other iceberg underneath. So people typically have this awareness of the tip of the iceberg and their answering of their questions and what makes them sad, what makes them happy, what makes them angry. But in reality, there's all this other reasoning that's a foundation and a support. Like, that's the real reason why they are feeling those emotions up here. So I help them reveal what's underneath the entire iceberg of their emotions, and that's more of an analysis, because I help them. It's not easy, and that's why that's like, again, that's like a portion of therapy. But therapy takes a long time in therapy to kind of analyze all of like somebody. Therapists typically spend kind of a lot of time on one problem and process it over and over and over again, and they allow the client to do most of the self-reflection work, which could take long time. So I kind of do the reverse. I help the client analyze their emotions for them, and then I don't help them process it. That's what a therapist is for. So it's not, so that's what I mean by an emotional analysis, is I really help them understand where the origin of their emotions, what caused them, what potentially is playing a larger role to their emotions than they are aware of.
So when you talk of these people, when you are helping them, right? Do you think that, could I quote it as, do you think depression is also one of the causes for really, like, I'm taking depression because it's one of the common causes of one of the mental, health that does affect. And to be very honest, I guess I myself has or have been through that, and it was, I believe that ripping the layer off is the only way to go, because analyzing them and really trying to get rid of the emotions and the feelings and the things that you're experiencing is only going to make it worse, because I guess it's gonna come back again. And it was, see, when they talk about depression, at least what I've heard is you stop eating, you stop feeling, you don't feel like doing anything, you don't, you're basically kind of a walking zombie, right? But you've never, I have never I've never, what do you call, how do we say this? Like, I never realized it, that I was in that situation, or I was depressed, until someone actually told me, like, you know, do you know you're depressed? And I was like, oh shit. Like, I had to, it just took me a little time to process it, because I thought I was working towards it, but then I was like, like, the times when you feel stuck, like you cannot do anything, and you're just like, oh shit, I don't live or die, day and night, I don't know whether to do anything, feel anything, talk about anything. It's just mute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
I suffer with panic disorder,
post-traumatic stress,
obsessive compulsive disorder,
postpartum psychosis,
history of depression.
I'm diagnosed schizophrenic.
I've been bereaved by suicide.
I was actually diagnosed at the age of 15 or 14, even, I can't remember the exact age, as being bipolar.
It's like this little bad seed that it gets planted in you in a very young age.
I'd never had any history of mental illness, so it was really scary.
It kind of grows and grows, and then before you know it, you're like living in a shame jungle.
If suppose there was a friend of mine who is actually going through that, I guess it's very difficult to really, when you say, like, it's very difficult to get those, things and those questions and everything running when that person is in that state, right? How do you deal, like, how do you kind of pave your way through these emotions when you talk to people, and when you say you have in-depth analysis, right? What has your experience been like so far?
Sure, that's a good question, because I completely understand. What you're saying is when people are in an extremely depressed state of mind, it makes it 10,000 times more difficult to facilitate any type of real self-reflection that's going to create some kind of change, because they don't even want to talk to anybody, and their mind is kind of not working as well. I've definitely been in that situation. I have not done my analysis, like my report, that method, that mind analysis summary and action plan method. I'm not sure that's going to work for someone who's depressed, because I give that in order for them to, like, you're right, in order for them to get my analysis, they have to fill it out. And if they're not willing to fill it out, if they're depressed, there's nothing I can do, because that's the process. They need to fill it out. And the only way, like, I could help them over a Zoom call and try and facilitate it one-on-one, but that tends to take a lot longer. It's difficult because now it's on Zoom. I'm not in the same room with the person. At the same time, I'm not a therapist, so technically I'm not supposed to even be dealing with anyone with mental illnesses, because you need a license to do that. So ironically, the way the system is, the way the mental health system is, it's screwed up, because people who don't have a license are, like, literally not supposed to help anybody with any diagnosable mental disorder, at least in, like, America. I don't know how it is in other countries, but yeah, it's considered unethical, which I just find is just ridiculous, because depressed people have friends, depressed people have family members, depressed people have mentors, depressed people have jobs, depressed people talk to employees, they talk to everyone they have access to people around them who could give them advice on their depression. So the fact that I'm not allowed to help someone with depression when I can help someone, when I know I can help someone, just because I don't have a license, is ridiculous. But that's a whole nother discussion. But to help to answer your question in a more shorter way, from my experience of how I have helped people with depression, what I find the most helpful is, and I don't know how to explain it, like how I do it, because this is again one of my natural kind of talents, I guess you could say, or superpowers. I don't know if it's teachable, but the key is to inject logic into their mind and inject a catalytic perception shift where they just have not thought about something you said before, and that immediately creates a synapsis, like a neural pathway in the brain to connect that they didn't have before, that they could not do on their own. Because, you know, if you know anything about like your brain and the neural pathways that are really firing, and your conditioning of certain negative ways of thinking and negative thoughts and perceptions, they create actual sheaths around those pathways so that they're stronger, so that you can't actually stop thinking negatively, and you can't actually produce positive thoughts because your brain has been conditioned so much to only think negatively that it creates this like protective coating around the actual like firing of the of the neural pathways. So like there's a lot of biology that's important to understand when you have depression. So even saying that to someone with depression could be very helpful, because a lot of the times when people are depressed, there's a few different like characteristics. Like they don't have a lot of understanding about what's going on, you know, within their own mind, the biology behind it, why it's happening, how to even fix it. You know, they just don't know. They don't have enough information about their situation. And two, they don't have a very wise perception about their situation, like an objective perception. They're very, very, very self-absorbed in their own subjective experience. You know, they have that block that's just telling them that their emotions are 100% fact, that their traumas are 100%, you know, fact, like that defines them. And that the biology even plays a huge role in it, because your trauma is stored within your central nervous system. So if you don't know that, of course you're not going to understand how to change it, because it has a lot to do with your body, your physical body, and sometimes it doesn't even have so much to do with your perception of your situation. So again, a lot of depressed people are missing that kind of information, that kind of understanding about their own depression, what the hell it is, which I think just telling them about that is very helpful, because now they understand what it is and how to kind of address it. And then the other thing is, most depressed people are ignoring something, where that introspection comes into play, because they don't understand, they don't know about it, so they're ignoring something. And they also are not pursuing what they really deep down want to. So they have they're not pursuing something. Yeah, I mean, they don't feel like they're making progress. That's where that stuck feeling comes into play, and it's because they
got that.
Yeah.
Because the word that I said, I was stuck. I mean, this is exactly what you just said. This is exactly what I felt. When
and that feeling of feeling stuck, that is a direct result of it's not simple. I don't want to say it's simple, but at the same time it kind of is. You just need to figure out your vision, figure out how to actually take measurable steps to accomplish your vision, start to get into habits, good habits that move that needle every day, so you start to feel progress. You start to actually have this literal feeling, wow, I'm getting somewhere, so that you can look back a month or a week and be like, I've made so much progress in a week. And like as humans, we need that constant kind of progress, change feeling. So that is like one of the number one things that I've seen a lot of depressed people lack, is just a deeper fundamental understanding of how to create a vision, what a vision even is, and how to create measurable goals, and how to actually start changing habits. And that all requires help. Like you can't do it on your own, because you're not like, you can't. Your brain literally cannot change itself because it's conditioned to not change itself. You've been training your brain to literally stay the same. So without help, without a therapist, without a coach, without a mentor, your brain, it's going to be a lot harder. I mean, I'm not going to say it's impossible, because I kind of did it. I was very depressed as well. I have chronic depression. Depression never really goes away. It's the interpretation of depression that can shift. So I very much still have depression, but it does not affect me in the way it used to. And that's because I've trained my brain to interpret the depression differently. And I use the energy that depression supplies me, and I push it towards pursuing a goal, pursuing a vision, pursuing a dream. And when I don't feel as though I'm getting anywhere, there's certain coping skills, there's certain habitual, routines that you just need to train yourself to continuously could fall back to. But if without that understanding, without that help, it just makes it a shitload harder to kind of do.
Now, I'm just using my personal experience so that I can probably relate to what you're saying. You talked about logic with emotion, changing that perception from being emotional and having logical answers. It's a complete shift. And I guess this is something I can relate to. Writing it down and logically thinking about what's actually going on with you emotionally, and what I can do practically to really ease this out. I have encouraged so many people to just write. What do you have to say in this? Do you think there is, because I guess we connect, while writing at least, we connect to our subconscious mind, get it to conscious, and then get it on paper, like transfer that energy and completely put it out there. And then I don't have to think about it again, so that's one of the miracles, I think, of writing is, so what do you have to say to that? I'm curious.
Yeah, it's funny that the way you said it is like almost exactly how I describe it. First of all, writing is a classic. It's the core of cognitive behavioral techniques or cognitive behavioral therapy. So it is very well known scientifically that writing is extremely important for perception shifting and for rewiring of the brain. And it has a lot to do with exactly what you're saying. The very process of transforming thought, transforming subconscious emotions, feelings. It's a way of taking your central nervous system, that the information that's being held in your body, such as anxiety, you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your stomach, you can feel it in your hands when you shake, you feel anxiety sometimes in your face, in your head. So it is literally information being stored in your body, and it's being stored in your central nervous system, but it's got nowhere to really go unless you do some type of exercise. So when you write, what you're actually doing is integrating that information that's being held in your body and your perception of it, which is two different things. You have information and then you have interpretation of the information. And when you write, you're actually taking that and integrating it and putting it on paper. So then you're able to actually intake that and re-intake that information with your eyes. Or if you're blind, you're going to do braille, or you're going to hear it, and you're basically taking all the information, pushing it out, and then you're observing it with a more of an unbiased, curious perspective. And that curious perspective is the actual, like, that's the you behind all your shit. That's actually you as that unbiased awareness. So like when you're reading your thoughts again, you know, there's this very interesting kind of experience that, again, is not talked about a lot and not understood, but there's a reason why you're reading it again. You know, like we don't think about it. Why are you even reading it again? If you know, think about it. You're the one who wrote it, so why are you reading it again? And the reason is because the reason is because that real you, that is that unbiased awareness who's curious. You're curious to see what this crazy, you know, person that has been controlling most of your life is writing about, and all the crazy perspectives and everything. But there's a reason why we read what we write, and it's because that unbiased, non-judgmental version of our consciousness is the true authentic self. And that's where we're just curious. We just want to see what we wrote about.
I believe because staying curious throughout your life is the best way to live. Like not making sense of anything. And I guess this is something that I learned as a child. I mean, would you really think, I mean, as a child, when you observe two people talking, you don't know if the conversation is anger or there is happiness or there are emotions, not that much. It's just a picture in front of your head, in front of your eyes. And there's absolutely no judgment. Because again, you're not that, there are no voices in your head that are talking to you, right? Because it's just pure you, and you're just like, okay. I mean, you know, like that's something I have always gone back to, because it's just the best way to be and feel and see a child's mind. It's just blissful, because I mean, over the time, we again are surrounded by so many things, and we have to again get back to each other. And I think this gets me to meditation. Meditation, I guess, is one of the things that is going to just bring you back. Like, you have these transitions where, for example, if you're at the office, you're completely different. You're at kitchen, you're completely different. You're with your mother, you're completely different. You're with someone else who you're completely different, and then you're just alone. And then I am surprised when people say I cannot spend time with myself, because I'm sure you're running away from something, and I suggest you sit by yourself and really figure that out, because you're going to get very interesting answers. I'm sure of it.
Yeah. It's definitely one of, I mean, that's why I'm so passionate about self-awareness. There's less than 15% of, I forget, I don't know if in the US at least, I don't know if it's a worldwide statistic, but it's less than 15% where people are by criteria self-aware, and yet everyone thinks they're self-aware, you know? But it's very rare to be self-aware, because we're complex creatures, and like you said, we have all this external information consistently manipulating our perspective and interpretation of everything we do, and we have such subjectivity in our consciousness, and we're very much slaves to our environment and to our people around us. So it's so much easier to be not self-aware than to legitimately be self-aware. And that's actually one thing that always made me feel very alone my whole life, was because I seemed to be the only person self-aware. And I was like, what the hell is going on here? But I don't know.
I still feel the same way, but now I'm calmer about, you know what, it's okay, kind of a thing. Shit, yeah. Um, what could you talk a little bit about meditation? Do you use that, like, because there's so much. There is something called breath work also. There's so many now. Since I'm in India, there's a lot of yoga. I was taught as a kid how to do yoga, but never understood why I'm doing what I'm doing except twisting my body. And I'm like, just tell me why I'm doing this. I'm just sitting here twisting my body, going to competitions, and be like, that's all. Like, but why am I doing this? And then I kind of regret them not telling me. I mean, of course, my teacher, whoever the person was, not telling me why I'm doing what I'm doing, because yoga is so much more. Meditation is so much more.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, I could talk about meditation for a whole nother like couple hours. I'm very passionate about meditation because of my own personal experiences with it. And I share exactly your perspective where, in fact, I have a little bit of anger, to be honest, at most of the meditators. Yeah, and people who talk about meditation. I mean, there's such a bad name for it, and there's such a misunderstanding about it, and like relaxation techniques and guided relaxation is being coined off as meditation when it's just, to me, not meditation at all. It's just relaxation. You know, like you hear so much about on those internet articles about meditation, and people look peaceful and people are like all happy, and it looks so relaxing and calm and used for stress management. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, no, meditation is the opposite.
Yeah.
Meditation is like, it's all about suffering and feeling suffering, how to overcome that suffering, and how to interpret suffering, and how to dive deep into the places of your mind that you don't want to be in. And that's what meditation has always been for me. And it's only getting, it's like, you know, you again, bringing us back to that existence state of mind, that existence state of being. Then you have everything after existence comes all that crap, all of the human experience, right? And then you have like this really shallow top of the iceberg awareness. And meditation is literally pulling you back all the way through all of that crap, all the way back down to the existence perspective. So obviously you have a lot to go through. You know, you have so much to get to the bottom of existence. So it's not about relaxing at all. It's hard work. It's hard internal mind work. So anyway, I actually I'm writing a book on meditation, on my personal custom meditation. It's going to be a guidebook and a diary that I wrote over the last 5 years, all of my experiences with meditation. So it's hopefully going to be done within the next year. But then I have a mini ebook that kind of talks about meditation, but not to the degree that I want to.
Cannot wait. One. And second is, what has your experience been? Like, have you also tried a lot of things before you got to where you are? Were you curious about these practices? Were you curious about, religion and the practices, for example, Buddhism and all of that? How did you kind of paved your way through all of this? Like, did you try out all of this and then, filtered it out?
It's definitely, yeah, that's a good question. Where should I start?
Anyway.
I was always kind of anti-religion. The religion for me was just manipulation. It was a lot to do with politics. You know, when you study history, you realize most religions were kind of created to keep people in check, keep money flowing in certain spots, and keep people in control by manipulating their subjective emotions, by manipulating their fear, by manipulating, their perspectives and their kind of human vulnerability. there's the only religion that I ever loved was the religion of Buddhism, because that is what really pushed scientific perspectives. It pushed internal mind investigation. It pushed objectivity, non-judgmental attachment, and it pushed a better way of perceiving anything, in my opinion. And it had nothing to do with belief. It had to do with the process of interpretation, So that being said, I always gravitated towards Buddhism, but I didn't know anything about it besides what most people know about, and the general ideas behind it. That over time, I just heard here and there more things about Buddhism, but to be honest, I have an unconventional kind of story that brought me to meditation, because I actually thought meditation was ridiculous. I thought it was a joke. I thought that it was only for people who, were hippies and who were Buddhists and who were very, very religious. And I only thought it was for people who kind of just, again, fell into that trap of being manipulated by somebody else's ideas and somebody else's agenda. And what happened to me, I actually tried shrooms one day with my friends, and I had an extremely influential experience where, and I wrote about it. I felt, and I understand that, I understand it's hard to like accept my experience for truth, because obviously it's my individual experience. But for me, it was 100% true. And I had reached this level of consciousness that was the doorway of existence. And I wrote all about it while I was there, and all of this wisdom and all of this information out of nowhere just came to my head, where I had to write it all down. And it was just the most enlightening experience for me that I really ever had in my life, where I just understood what it meant to perceive in existence's perspective. And ever since that point, I had a friend who was meditating with a Zen master at my university, at Rutgers University. And I wanted to talk to her about my experience, because I was like, you're very into meditation. I'm curious what you think about this. So I brought her everything that I wrote. I wrote like 6 pages while I was having this trip. And I gave it to her, and she was like looking at me. She was like, so much of what you wrote, she's like, have you ever tried meditation, or do you understand what Zazen meditation is? I'm like, no, I know nothing about it. She's like, because so much of what you wrote are things kind of discussed in meditation and experiences that you can reach through meditation. And even the logic that I was writing down was perspectives and logic that a lot of Zen masters teach in meditation. So I was just like, holy shit. And that is honestly what got me into meditation. After I heard that from her, I was like, well, maybe I should go meditate with this Zen master, because he holds meditations 3 or 4 times a week. And they last about an hour to an hour and a half, because it's not like a 20-minute meditation. It's an hour or an hour and a half meditation. It's like deep mind work. And so I started doing that for a few years, and I just experienced so many different experiences with meditation. I went to sesshins, which I'm sure you've heard of. They're like those 10-day retreats, meditation retreats. I went to a couple of those, and again, just had extremely interesting, very enlightening experiences that helped bring my mind to a much more unbiased perspective of existence. And once you kind of experience things like that, they don't ever go away. And I'll admit, I have not been meditating as nearly as much as I should be, because I've been focusing so much on my job and stuff like that, and my business. But the experience of it, the wisdom of meditation is still there, and that, I can't wait to get some more time so I can start meditating back in that mind state again. But yeah, so that's my kind of story.
Very interesting. Again, could relate a lot. The word that really comes strongly while you were narrating this is observation. One, when you say interpretation, and me as a child, I have realized that I didn't speak a lot, but I did observe a lot.
Yeah, that was me too.
I think that was the strongest experience that I had, because I can use that now. I know how to, because I know exactly what's happening. Exactly what's happening. I don't think that it's necessary for me to talk all the time. I just talk when I think there is a necessity to talk. I don't like to talk. I don't know why, but I think that's empty vessels make more noise. That's something I could really relate to. But this gets me to, I completely forgot what I was saying. When you come this deep and then like there's so many things going around in your head and you just completely like get but when
I
you
understand. I'm
I
sorry.
mean, you're like in a sleepy state. I'm just like, I hope I'm not taking up like too much time. But this is so interesting. But just tell me when to stop, okay, Alex? Like, just tell me, like, okay, this is it. Because when this is what I love about having conversations about with people. I can talk, but talk something that is really going to, you know, again, transform of energy and perceptions and ideas, not something that's shallow, but something Otherwise, I don't want to talk.
Yeah. No, we are very similar. It's funny because that's something that always it was kind of a problem for me. I did not like. I hate superficiality. I hate shallow talking, shallow conversations. Like you. I'd rather stay silent unless it's something really like almost just completely perception changing. If we're gonna be talking, is why I agree with you. And actually, that was tough for me with girls because girls, I would go from like if I ever wanted to talk to a girl, I would go from like, zero, hey, how's it going, to way too far for girls to like, what the fuck? So I never was able to do that whole superficial talking thing.
I think it's, for me, I guess a lot of people just tell me this, well, that escalated quickly, or why is and I'm like, what do you mean why you're so deep? That is why I'm having conversations, yeah. Like, don't tell me why am I so deep, why are you so shallow? Like, like it just irritates me. But whatever, like, but I'm whatever, this is who I am, and I just don't like to have conversations, or you shut them up by saying it just doesn't make sense and I'm not interested. But have you read this book called Be Here Now? I don't know if I have it.
I think I have it.
Ramdas.
Yeah. I think I have it. Yeah, I think I have it on my on my bookshelf. I didn't read it, but I think I have it.
It kind of, when you talked about shrooms and having those kind of experience, this guy talks about his story and all his experience, especially when it just like, I've heard so many stories about people just like, being all enlightened when they come to India and all of that, I myself being in India, having had those experiences, of course, and I'm sure I hope to so. And even when you said about certain practices, there's one Buddhist I don't know if it's Buddhist, but a practice, it's called Vipassana. I don't know if you've heard of it. You don't talk.
I know what that is. Yeah.
Sorry, here they call it, some days people practice Maun Vrat. Maun Vrat is something that you don't talk at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they're very similar.
Yeah. So that was something I thought I could tell you about. Alex, if you had one thing to tell people, what would that be?
You know, it's funny. I asked that same question on my Voices of the Adopted page. I asked them, if you had one message to the world, what would it be? And I always prayed that no one would ask me that. Because I have to think. Hold on. All right, let me think. Well, I guess I'll start with because I went through those exercises to figure out my why, my core reason why I'm trying to do what I'm doing. And a lot of it has to do with, my illusion that I was under for so long, that I was a monster, that I was a bad person, and that I want people to know that it is possible to change. Whether, you feel like you're a monster or whatever it is, it's just kind of simple. It is very possible to change, and whatever that means to you, whatever that saying helps you think about, just use it, because it is possible to change. That's it. I think that's all I would like to say.
Is there a difference between change and shift?
I don't know.
I guess that's.
I don't know, but
from what you said. Yeah.
Yeah, whatever it means to you, that's it's meant to be used to think about. So.
What is there any book that you would recommend, or be hands down?
Yeah, I have a few. I mean, I have a few that I'm basing a lot of my teachings off of. There's this one called My Big Toe, and it's pretty big. It's a pretty big book, and it basically brings you, My Big Toe stands for My Big Theory of Everything, and it's by Thomas Campbell, and he starts from literally the origin. He's a genius. He's a physicist, a philosopher. He's making a lot of strides in the physics community, and he's kind of pulling together a lot of theories with Boehm. David Boehm is another physicist who died, who I think his understandings of conventional science and our original existence in terms of physics is now being more accepted, because he was actually shunned from the science community because his theories might have replaced the current theories of physics right now. And because politics run the world, they were like, fuck that, let's just call them crazy, kind of like Tesla, So anyway, I really enjoy trying to integrate physics with everything else that we're learning and experiencing and stuff like that. So My Big Toe is I'm trying to finish it, but that's something that I would really recommend. That, and How Enlightenment Changes the Brain. I don't remember the author, but that book goes into studying the actual brain and how people who have claimed to be enlightened, what their brain looks like before and after. And it goes through people who have meditated, it goes through people who does chanting, it goes through all different types of ways to reach an enlightened state of mind, and it breaks down what an enlightened state of mind looks like the different criterias. And it also provides you with like kind of a formula to reach that state of mind the fastest. So I integrate that with my meditation that I created, on top of some other things that I've learned. So those two books are pretty cool. And The Untethered Soul, which is a pretty famous book. And that helps shift perception of your energy and your suffering. So behind those three, I think those are good to start with.
This is great. I would also would love to have your own work and your books also, because I would like to put that down as well. You've written how many books again? Have you you've written some?
No, I mean, I wrote like a little ebook, but it's not like, it's like not like considered a huge novel or anything. It's just, I think it's like 17, 18 pages. But it's not, I don't think it's, I need to, yeah. But I'll share that with you. I could send it to you. What I'm writing is that's going to be over 100 some pages. That's the meditation guidebook. And that is more of like, it's like a hybrid between a diary, like my meditation diary, a dynamic workbook / diary that you could, like someone, whoever's reading it could write in it and write their own meditation experiences. And it breaks down my own custom meditation as well, and various explanations of what's going on. So that's going to be in depth, but that's going to take a while for me to finish.
Alex, one last question. When you say this, do you think that there has to be a clearer path and way of narrating meditation? Because as you said, there are so many apps and there's so many ways that that people are trying to again make sense of what meditation is. And do you think your book is also going to help probably simplify and really be accurate? At least, of course, you won't be able to elaborate it as much as it is, but do you think that is also one of the cause of you writing the book? Like, what actually made you write this?
Yeah, so from what I've seen, there's no meditation explanation like mine, and the explanation of meditation is really lacking. There's all these types of meditation. There's guided meditations, and there's Vipassana, and there's the basic kind of theories behind meditation, like you have said. There's so many ways to meditate, but nobody's explaining why. And no one's explaining what the hell meditation can do. And no one's explaining like just all the little details of meditation, even like experiencing things when you're meditating and what to do when you experience them. Because when you meditate, you can experience so many things. I mean, I felt things where I felt like I was floating. I felt things where I felt like I disappeared. I was in this like one-dimensional thing. I felt things where I was falling in like a hole. And a lot of those have to do with just symptoms of shifting into different states of mind, and you're kind of supposed to ignore them. But at the same time, if you don't explain that, somebody who's feeling that might be addicted to those feelings, because it's very like, it feels like a drug. So that can present a problem to people who are addicted to drugs, because they just now are meditating to feel that high. So there's all little things like that people don't know about, because they're not reaching that advanced level of meditation. They're reaching a very, very basic beginner level of meditation that literally is focusing on all the stupid shit that doesn't mean anything. But there's like this level of meditation that's like at beginning, advanced, or intermediate, and then advanced. And when you get to that advanced level, that's where you tap into that subconscious wisdom and that subconscious existence perspective that you can pull into your actual day-to-day conscious state of mind. And like, that's what people are missing, is is actually reaping the benefits of tapping into that subconscious wisdom faster and more sustainably, and how to actually use that wisdom in their day-to-day life. And so many people are just meditating to reduce anxiety and feel more relaxed. And like, I'm just interested, I care nothing about feeling relaxed, because my whole thing is interpreting, like, if we could help people interpret their definitions of suffering, their definitions of anxiety, their definitions of depression, if we could just shift that interpretation, then it doesn't matter how much you suffer, because you're going to perceive it differently. So relaxing is a temporary coping mechanism, you know. So those BuzzFeed kind of meditations, they're just kind of they're putting a Band-Aid on a lot of people's problems. And this meditation is that I want to talk about, that I want to create, or I created, that I want to perfect and teach. That is like, it has nothing to do with relaxation. It's like, it's intense, and it's like way more for somebody who wants to do the work, as opposed to just feel better.
That is on point, Alex, because everything that you said was like, dude, even I don't know what, what the stages of meditation are. I'll be very honest with you. I might have read something, or I might have tried something. I experienced some of what you said also. And it is so true when you said that, people might do it just to get that experience, or just to get that high. And as you said, again, being distracted, where they say that it's more of relaxation and not the actual thing. That is so true. And that is why I guess it's again filtering your way through, and it's not easy. It's definitely not easy. That's awesome, dude. But yeah, dude, great initiative, man. Like, I hope all the luck. I mean, this is going to grow, I'm sure. Especially when you do it with your heart out, and when you believe it to be, and when you put it out in the universe, I'm sure there are ripple effects that is going to do a lot of, dude, great, man. Amazing. Awesome. I'm going to shut up.
Well, thank you.
I'm going to leave. Yeah. So I'll just send it to you once it's saved, okay? On the same email ID, right?
Yeah.
The same email ID, right? All right. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Alex.
All right. I'm gonna go take a nap.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.